أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Lesson number 124, Surah Yusuf. Will begin from ayah number 43. We learned in the previous ayat that Yusuf a.s. was sent to the prison for a crime that he never committed. And while he was there, the prison inmates, the two of them, they had dreams. And Yusuf a.s. interpreted their dreams for them. And we also saw how they found Yusuf a.s. to be a muhsin, to be someone who was very good in his behavior, in his mannerism, in his character, despite the fact that he was in the prison, which is a horrendous place to be in. And we also saw that one of the men who had a dream that he was pressing wine, Yusuf a.s. interpreted his dream that he was going to go back to his work. He was going to be employed again by his master, and he was going to continue to serve wine to his master. And this man, Yusuf a.s. told him that when you get out of the prison, make sure you mention me to your master, that I have been kept in the prison for an unlimited period of time, for a crime that I have not committed. So mention me. But what happened? Shaitan made this man forget completely. He went out of the prison, he went back to his work, he never mentioned Yusuf a.s. So Yusuf a.s. he remained in the prison for a few more years, for bid'a sinin, and that's somewhere between 3 and 9. But then what happened? Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a plan for Yusuf a.s. He stayed in the prison for the time that he was supposed to stay in it for. And then what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the means for him to come out of the prison. And what was that? That out of all people, the king, he saw a dream. And this dream was very strange. And the king knew that it had some meaning to it. Which is why he asked about the interpretation of that dream, and nobody was able to give him an answer. Just think about it. Sometimes you have a dream. It's so vivid, it's so clear. And you keep thinking about it, you keep remembering it. And sometimes it happens that you see a dream over and over again. Or you see a particular person or a particular object in various dreams repeatedly. So you know that it's something important. You know that there's some reason behind it. And you wonder about what is happening. You wonder about the interpretation. So the king also, he had a very strange dream, and he wanted to make sure he knew the interpretation of that dream. What was that dream? وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ, and the king said, meaning the king of Egypt. It is said that his name was Rayyan. However, Allahu A'lam what his actual name was. And according to some, he was actually Fir'aun of that time. However, this title Fir'aun has not been used for him in the Quran. So it's possible that at that time, the title of the kings was not Fir'aun. And later on, that title was given. So the king said that Inni ara, indeed I saw, meaning I saw in my dream. And the word ara is from the root letters Ra Hamza Ya. Ra'yun, which is to see something whether in a dream or in reality, or to imagine something in the mind. So I have seen in my dream sab'a baqaratin, 7 cows. Baqarat is a plural of baqara. So I saw in my dream 7 cows, and these 7 cows are simanin. They are very fat. Siman is a plural of samin. Sin, mim, ya, noon. Samin. This is not samin. Okay? This is not samin. The name is samina, which is with the sa, which means very precious. That's from the word saman. Okay? This is samin. And samana literally means to be fat, to be obese. And basically it is when, for example, an animal, it has a lot of flesh on it, a lot of fat on it. So I saw 7 obese cows, and these 7 obese cows, what's happening to them? يَأْكُلُهُنَّ, it eats them up. What eats these 7 cows up? Sab'un, 7 other cows that are ijafun, that are very thin, that are very lean and slender. The word ijaf is a plural of arjaf. And arjaf is from the root letters Ain, Jim, Fa. According to others, the singular of the word ijaf is ajfa. The singular is ajfa. Ain, Jin, Fa, Alif, Hamza. And basically it is used for an animal that is extremely thin, that is extremely lean, to the point that its bones are being exposed. Its bones are being shown. Very skinny, very lean, very slender. And ajf is also used for an animal that becomes very thin due to the loss of fat, due to the reduction of fat. Basically, there's no fat on the body. And generally this happens when an animal is not provided sufficient food. When an animal is not provided sufficient food. Like for example, if a person has a cat or a dog, and a person does not take care of it properly, does not provide it food, and the cat is living in the house, it's not a cat that can go and hunt by itself, then what's going to happen? Eventually it's going to become very thin. The flesh, the fat in the body is going to reduce, and the bones are going to be revealed. So this is what ijaf is. That 7 cows that are extremely lean, that are very slender, what do? They eat up 7 cows that are fat, that are obese. Now this is very strange, because a cow, first of all, does not eat other cows, isn't it? And if you think of it, cows that are bigger, that are more fat, they must have more power to save themselves, isn't it? But who is eating them up? Other 7 cows which are very thin, which are very slender, very skinny. And on the other hand, he also saw wasabra and 7 sumbulatin, spikes. Sumbulat is the plural of sumbula. And remember the word sumbula? مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ كَمَثَلِ حَبَّةٍ. And that habba and then sumbul also was mentioned in that ayah. So sumbula is a spike, a stem, an ear of grain. Basically a stem at the end of which there is a bunch of grains, there is a cluster of grains. So he saw 7 spikes that were khudrin, that were green. Do you understand? Green spikes. Like for example, you go to a field which is not ready for harvest. So you can imagine the entire crop is green. So he saw clearly 7 spikes that were green, that were khudr. Wa ukhar, and other, meaning other spikes, other 7 spikes that were yabisatin, that were dry. Yabisat is a plural of yabisa. And yabisa is from the root letters ya, ba, sin. And yabis is basically that which is dry, that which is not green, that which is not fresh. Basically, it is when a leaf or a branch or some kind of plant, it becomes dry and it does not even remain green anymore. What is that a sign of? What is that a sign of? That plant is dead. It's finished. Like for example, if you have a particular plant in your house and a leaf, it falls off. If you leave it there, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's going to become dry. It's going to lose its moisture. It's going to become shriveled up. So similarly, he saw 7 other spikes that were dry. So he says to his people, Ya ayyuhal mala, O mala, meaning O nobles, O chiefs. So he asks his nobles, his chiefs, to interpret the dream for him. Aftuni, all of you tell me, give me opinion, advise me, fi ru'yaya, concerning my vision, concerning my dream. The word aftuni is from the root letters fataya, from the word fatwa, and according to others fatawa. If you notice, the word fata and fatwa are both from the same root. And fatwa is a verdict, a legal decision, a legal verdict, a solution to a problem. And in particular, it is used for a religious solution to a problem. So tell me, advise me concerning my vision, in kuntum, if you are lirru'ya, for the dreams, ta'burun, you all interpret. A ru'ya is used for a dream. If you notice, we have learned many words so far for the word dream. And inshallah, in this lesson, in the following ayat, we will learn more words for dream. Ru'ya in particular is used for a complete dream. What is it? A complete dream. So he says to them, tell me about the interpretation of this dream of mine, because it seems to be complete. إِن كُنتُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا تَعْبُرُونَ. If you interpret dreams. Ta'burun is from the root letters Ain Ba Ra, from the word ta'bir, ibara, which is to interpret something. Basically it's from the word ubur, which is to cross. So you see something and you wonder what is the outcome? What is the result? What is the answer? Or what is the lesson in it? What is being said to me? So you cross the surface and you see what the intent is. So if you interpret dreams, tell me about the interpretation of this dream of mine. So what do we learn in this ayah? First of all, we see that dream interpretation is not only a part of Islam. It's not only a part of our religion, but it is present in various cultures, in various religions. Why? Because people have been seeing dreams from the very beginning, and sometimes they wonder, what does this dream mean? Why have I seen it? What message is being conveyed to me? People wonder. And also we see that it's not necessary that only a religious and a true and righteous believer sees a meaningful dream. Do you understand? It's not necessary that a person who sees a true and meaningful dream must be a very righteous believer, must be very up there. No. An ordinary person can also see a dream that is true, a dream that is very meaningful, to the point that even a disbeliever or someone who is extremely sinful, even he can see such dreams. It is said that the religion of the Egyptians at that time was of shirk, as we learned from the da'wah of Yusuf a.s. So the king was definitely a polytheist. And on top of that, we also saw that he had a person who would only serve wine to him. So you can imagine the amount of drinking he must do. He was a drunkard. He would drink a lot. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him have a true dream as well. He made him have a meaningful dream as well. So just because you see someone who talks a lot about good dreams, it does not necessarily mean that they are very righteous. It does not necessarily mean that they're very up there. You understand? And we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this man have a dream. Why? There was a reason behind that. Because this was going to become a means of what? Yusuf a.s. coming out of the prison. This was going to become a means of Yusuf a.s.'s release from the prison. So we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He helps His servants through unseen means, through ways that can never be imagined, can never be expected. Can you ever imagine someone coming out of prison because of interpreting someone's dream? Because of a dream that someone has, and a dream such as this, that he sees 7 cows which are being eaten up by 7 other cows, and 7 spikes which are very fresh and 7 spikes which are dry. Apparently it seems like a weird, strange dream. But this dream, the king was very firm that I want the interpretation for this dream. And Yusuf a.s. was able to interpret it for him, and it became the means of his release from the prison. So over here we see that he addresses his mala. This shows that he must have gathered up his priests, his chiefs, his princes, and all of the royal family, all of the elite of that society, and he must have asked all of them, what is the interpretation of this dream of mine? Like for example, if there is something very important that, let's say, a president of a country is going through, who is he going to ask? His advisors, and sometimes it's going to go beyond that. Like for example, professors of certain universities. Similarly, managers or CEOs of certain companies, those who have some relevance to what the issue is. Similarly, this king also, he gathered up his chiefs and he asked them, tell me the interpretation of this dream of mine. But they did not know the interpretation. So as an excuse, they said, قالوا, they replied, أضغاث أحلام. What you have seen is only a mixture of false dreams. They didn't know the interpretation. So what did they do? They made an excuse that what you have seen is not a true dream. It's only a mixture of false dreams. The word adghas is the plural of dighs, from the root letters dad, ghain, sa, dighs. And dighs is used for a bunch. a handful of dry grass and twigs. What is it? A handful of dry grass and twigs. The word is also used for a small broom. Because not these plastic brooms that you have now, but maybe a broom that you can find in an Indian store, which is a handful of, a bunch of dry twigs, dry thin branches. So this is the literal meaning of the word dhis. And from this it is used for something that is confused, something that is muddled up, something that is unclear. Because when you have a bunch of dry grass, you cannot differentiate between each blade. You cannot differentiate between each twig. Isn't it so? So similarly, dhis is used for a confusion, when something is muddled up, when something is not clear. And ahlam is the plural of hulm. Ha, lam, mim with a dhamma on the ha. Hulm. And hulm is also used for a dream. Another word for a dream. So what kind of a dream is hulm? Hulm is used for manamatul batila. A dream that is false. A false dream. False, not in the sense that a person is lying about it, but false in the sense that it does not have any meaning to it. It is a meaningless dream. It's not a true dream. And if you think about it from the same root, ha, la, mim, you also get the word hilm. And hilm is what? Tolerance. Isn't it? But also, halama means to reach puberty. What does it mean to reach puberty? And that is when a person generally becomes more tolerant. When children are younger, they're more prone to throwing tantrums. But when they become older, when they hit puberty, after that, they're expected to become more tolerant. They're expected to behave more properly. Isn't it so? If a child is misbehaving, you say, he's only a child. But if a teenager is misbehaving, what are you going to say? He's a teenager? That's what people say, but it's not acceptable. Because once a person has hit puberty, then he must show some tolerance. But when a person hits puberty, one of the things that happens is that the sexual desire, it becomes alive as well. And which is the reason why people also begin to have wet dreams. So, hulm is also used for a wet dream. First of all, it's used for a dream that is batila, that is not true. Then it's also used for a wet dream. From this, it is also used for an obscene dream, a scary dream. So they said, what you have seen is just a bunch of mixed, false, and meaningless dreams. Adghasu ahlam. What you have seen is a bunch of mixed, false, and meaningless dreams. This is what you've seen. These visions that you have seen, 7 cows that are very fat, and 7 cows that are very thin, and 7 fresh spikes, and 7 dry spikes. All of these visions are, what are they? A bunch of false, unreal, meaningless dreams. وَمَا نَحْنُ, and we are not, بِتَأْوِيلِ, with interpretation of al-ahlam, of the dreams, bi'alamin, at all ones who know. Meaning we do not know the interpretation of false dreams. We know the interpretation of true dreams, but not of ahlam. And what you have seen is one of the ahlam. So in other words, there is no interpretation to this dream of yours. And now what happened? The king is saying this, he is mentioning his dream. So obviously his personal servants must have heard about this dream as well. Especially the one who would offer wine to him. And who was that man? Who was this man? The one who was sent to the prison, whose dream Yusuf a.s. had interpreted, and Yusuf a.s. had asked him, mention me to your master. But this man had completely forgotten. But now when the king mentioned his dream, all of a sudden, this man remembered Yusuf a.s. He had completely forgotten him. But now he remembered Yusuf a.s. So وَقَالَ الَّذِي, and he said, who said? الَّذِي نَجَى مِنْهُمَا, the one who was saved, the one who was freed from them too. From who too? From the 2 prisoners. And the word naja is from the root letters nun, jim, waw. from the word najat, which is to be saved, to escape, to be released, to be delivered. So the one who was saved from the two prisoners, he said, and وَادَّكَرَ, and he remembered, بَعْدَ أُمَّةٍ, after a period of time. And he remembered who after a period of time? Yusuf alayhi salam. The word iddakara is actually dakara. And after many changes, due to several reasons, it turns into iddakara. So what dakara, and he remembered, and the word iddakara is basically used for remembering something after reflection, after thinking about it. Like for example, somebody is mentioning about, let's say, something just happened to their washroom. Let's say a tile broke out or something. A tile is cracked. You're thinking, you know what, the same thing happened in my house. What did I do? I think I called that person. Who was he? Where's the number? You think about it, you can't find it, and you called someone who gave you the referral, and then eventually you remember, okay, that's where I put the number. That's where the card is. So, iddakara is to remember something after reflection, after giving thought to it. So this man also, he thought about it, that who told me the interpretation of my dream? Did I have a dream as well? Yes, I had that dream, and that man in the prison, he told me the interpretation, and his name was Yusuf. So, وَادَّكَرَ بَعْدَ أُمَّةٍ. And ummah is used in different ways. One of the meanings of ummah is a time period. As we learned earlier, وَلَئِنْ أَخَّرْنَا عَنْهُمُ الْعَذَابَ إِلَىٰ أُمَّةٍ مَعْدُودَةٍ. In Surah Hud we learned. So he remembered after a few years. And he said that أَنَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ, I will inform you بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, with its interpretation. I will tell you the interpretation of this dream of yours. فَأَرْسِلُونِي, so you all send me. Send me where? To the prison. Send me to the prison. I will go and find out the interpretation of this dream. Now this man, he had forgotten Yusuf alayhi salam for many years. And we learned earlier that it was shaitan who had made him forget about this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed it to happen. Why? There was a reason behind that. Yusuf alayhi salam was not meant to come out of the prison any sooner than this, because the ground was not prepared for him. If he had come before, then he wouldn't be able to do this work. And the reason why he was brought out now was because the ground was prepared for him. So there was a reason why this man had forgotten. There was a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to forget. And many times the same thing happens with us. We ask someone to do something, they completely forget. We ask them after a week, did you do this? I'm so sorry, I completely forgot. And you get very upset. How could you forget? This is so important. Don't you realize? But that person honestly forgets. Why? There is a reason behind that. Because if you were to do that work at that time, it would not be in your favor. You might think it's in your favor, but in reality it's not in your favor. And the fact that he remembers later, that is the time when this work is in your favor, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen at that time. Now this person did not have any bad feelings for Yusuf alayhi salam, which is why he didn't care about him. This was just naturally he forgot about him. Just like, for example, a person when he's free, he doesn't have anything to do, he plans, I will do this, I will do that. But when he goes back to work, he forgets about all those things that he had thought about. So you can imagine this man as well, when he went back to work, he forgot about Yusuf alayhi salam, because he became so busy. But there was a reason behind that. And if you look at it, when he comes to Yusuf alayhi salam, what does he say to him? Yusufu, O Yusuf, ayyuha siddiq, O man of truth. He doesn't say, I'm so sorry, I forgot about you. He doesn't even apologize. And Yusuf alayhi salam does not start yelling at him as soon as he sees him. He hears him. He hears what he has to say. He says, Yusuf, O Yusuf, ayyuha siddiq, O man of truth. And as-siddiq is from the root letters, Sad dal qaf. And siddiq is kathir as-sidq, one who is extremely truthful. Very, very truthful. And a person is called Siddiq when he has demonstrated truthfulness through his words, in his actions, in different ways. Now the question is, why does this man call Yusuf alayhi salam Siddiq? Why does he call him truthful? Because the interpretation that Yusuf alayhi salam had told him, it was true. Earlier he called him a muhsin, and now he called him a Siddiq. So he says, Yusuf, O man of truth, aftina, explain to us, give your opinion to us concerning the dream of sab'i baqaratin, 7 cows that are simanin, that are fat. Ya'kuluhunna, it eats them up, sab'un ijafun, 7 lean ones. Wa sab' and 7 sumbulatin, spikes that are khudr, green. Wa ukhara yabisat, and other dry ones. Tell me about the interpretation of this dream. لَعَلِّي, so that I may, أَرْجِعُ إِلَى النَّاسِ, I can go back to the people. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ, so that they can know. What can they know? The interpretation of this dream. And also they can know about you. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ, so that they can learn. They will find out. What will they find out? The interpretation. And also they will find out about you. And once they find out about you, this will become a means of your release from the prison. Now, this ayah shows the confidence that this man had in Yusuf alayhi salam. Look at the confidence that he called him Siddiq. And he tells him, tell me the interpretation quickly so that I can go and tell them so that they will find out. It's as if he will believe anything that Yusuf alayhi salam will tell him. Why? Because what Yusuf alayhi salam told him before was true. This is the reputation that a person develops when he is truthful. That people begin to trust him. People begin to trust him to the point that no matter what he says, they believe him. No matter what he says, they follow him. And this characteristic is extremely important. Very, very important. Especially for a person who is a da'i, who is calling people to the deen of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ, even he was known as Sadiq and Amin. And Yusuf a.s., even he is called Siddiq. But how do you develop this reputation? By speaking the truth. By telling the people that which is true. Also one thing you must notice in this ayah, that this man when he comes and tells Yusuf a.s. about the dream, he tells it exactly as he was told about it. Isn't it? The words are the same. The sequence is the same. Everything is the same. All the details are there. He does not alter the dream even a little bit. And he does not leave out any detail. What does this show to us? That when you are asking someone about the interpretation of your dream, or when you're telling someone about a dream that you have seen, you must tell them about all of the details. You cannot leave bits and pieces out. Bits and pieces that go against you. Because every little thing can make a huge difference. If you just said cows, and he didn't specify the number, then that would lead to an interpretation that would not be correct. Because the number 7 indicated something very important. Similarly, if he did not mention the spikes, or if he did not mention the fact that the first 7 cows were fat and the other 7 cows were thin, then even that would not lead to the correct interpretation. So what's the lesson in this for us? What's the lesson? That when we are narrating dreams, then we must be accurate. Now what does Yusuf a.s. do upon hearing this? Does he say, where were you? Does he begin criticizing him? Does he begin to set a precondition? That only if I'm released, then I'm going to tell you about the interpretation? No. He tells him the interpretation immediately. And what is that? Qala, he said, Yusuf a.s. said, that tazra'una, you all will plant, you all will cultivate, 7 sinina, 7 years. Da'aban, consecutively, continuously, without a break. Tazra'una is from the root letters Zay, Ra, Ain, Zara'a. And Zara'a is to sow a seed and then look after it, take care of it, maintain the plant until it is harvested. So قَالَتْ تَزْرَعُونَ, you all will plant, meaning each year you will cultivate. And for how many years? سَبْعَ سِنِينَ, 7 years. دَأَبًا, consecutively, without any break. Da'ab is from the root letters Dal, Hamza, Ba. Any other word from the same root? Da'b. كَدَأْبِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ. And what does da'b mean? Habit, tradition, custom, usual custom. And when does a person develop a habit? When he does something constantly, without a break. It's not possible that you do something one day, and then you leave it for a week, and then you do it again. If you do it like that, are you going to be able to develop a habit? No. You have to do it constantly without a break. Because if you give any break in the middle, then you will not develop that habit. Many times it happens with people that when they're doing the course every single day they will, or for example during the week at least, 5 days of the week, they will do their lesson, they will read the Quran. But on the weekends, what will they do? They will not even open the Quran. Which is why once the course is over, then they rarely ever open the Quran. Why? Because they gave so many breaks in the middle. They never got to develop a habit. In order to develop a habit, you have to do that thing every single day, without a break. Because if you give a break of even one day, then it's going to affect your progress. It's going to affect your improvement. It's going to affect your commitment. So he said that you will plant for 7 years consecutively. The word sineen is a plural of sinah. And sinah is used for a year. But there are other words as well that are used for years. Like for example, Aam, very good. Any other word? Hawl. Hawl is also used for a year. What's the difference between them? Sinah is basically used for a year of hardship and difficulty. A year that is full of hardship and difficulty. And sometimes this hardship is caused by shortage of supplies, famine, shortage of food. And sometimes it is due to a lot of hard work that is involved in all of those years. So over here, why is the word sineen used? Because every single year, without a break, what are they doing? Farming. Isn't it so? And when you're farming, it's extremely difficult. Especially when you have to sow the seed, you have to look after it, and then you harvest, and then you have to take care of the food as well that you've harvested. It involves a lot of work. And the word sineen also applies to a year that is very hard, very difficult due to shortage of food. Like for example, we learned earlier in Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 130, that وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ. Fir'aun was seized with sineen, meaning years of famine, years of shortage of food. But over here, sineen is being used in what sense? A lot of hardship, a lot of work, because of constant farming every single year. And the word aam, on the other hand, is used for a year of plenty. A year of plenty, where there's abundant food, the time in which there's a lot of khair, people are safe, there are no difficulties. So he said you will plant for 7 years consecutively. And by the way, where did he get this meaning from? This interpretation, what does it refer to in the dream? The 7 fat cows. And also the 7 green spikes. That you will plant a lot. And then فَمَا حَصَدْتُمْ, whatever you all harvest. حَصَدْتُمْ, from ha, sad, dal, hasada, which is to harvest. So whatever you harvest in the 7 years, what should you do with it? All of that food. فَذَرُوهُ, so you leave it, you leave the grains, you leave the kernels, where? فِي سُنْبُلِهِ, in its spikes. The green spikes, remember? So leave the kernels, leave the grains in the spikes. And then what should you do with those spikes? Preserve them. Save them. But should you preserve and save all of your produce? No. إِلَّا except قَلِيلًا a little مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ of that which you eat. Meaning, take out only those which you're going to eat. Only enough that you're going to eat in that particular year. And the rest of it, store it. Why should you store it? Because in the following years, you're going to suffer from a famine. So what does he tell them over here? That only husk the crops that you need to eat. And the rest you must leave in the ears. You must leave the grain in the ears. Why? Because if you take the grains out, what's going to happen to them? They're going to go stale. You know that? If you take the grain out of the plant, and then you store it in a jar, in a bag, in your pantry, and you leave it for more than a year, it's going to become stale. It's going to have that bad taste. Even with nuts, grains, it happens. Sometimes it happens that you buy a bag of rice, and you're cooking, and it has that stale smell. Why? Because it's not that fresh. Especially when it's imported, and it's been there for a very long time. So this is what happens with the grain that has been taken out of the plant. So what does he say to them? Leave the grain in the plant. What's interesting over here is that Yusuf a.s., he doesn't just tell them the interpretation, but he also tells them the solution. What they should do. And remember, we learned about Yusuf a.s. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him hukum as well as ilm. He gave him wisdom as well as knowledge. Knowledge of the interpretation of dreams and wisdom as to what to do when you learn about that interpretation. What's the solution? What should be done? And then he says, ثُمَّ يَأْتِي, then it will come, مِن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ, after that. After what? After the 7 good years in which you will plant a lot, in which you will grow a lot, in which you will save a lot. After that will come sab'un, 7, meaning 7 years that are going to be shidadun, that are going to be severe. And shidad is a plural of the word shadid. And what does he mean by severe 7 years? Meaning years of hardship, years of scarcity, in which you will not be able to plant, in which you will not be able to grow. So in other words, 7 years of drought. But if you notice, look at the way he's telling them. He does not use a harsh word. He does not use famine, years of shortage. He just says years of difficulty. And what is this indicated by in the dream? The 7 lean, skinny cows. And in these 7 years, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? These 7 years are going to يَأْكُلْنَا, they will consume مَا قَدَّمْتُمْ, what you sent ahead لَهُنَّ, for them. The 7 thin cows, what did they do? They ate up the 7 fat cows. So these 7 years of famine, in these 7 years, what's going to happen? You are going to consume all that you had stored for these 7 years. مَا قَدَّمْتُمْ لَهُنَّ, what you had sent forth, what you had stored, what you had left in the sumbul, in the previous 7 years. Illa, except, meaning only some of that will remain. And what is that? قَلِيلًا, a little bit, مِمَّا تُحْصِنُونَ, of what you will store. All the food that you had preserved for the 7 years of famine, almost everything will be fully consumed except a little bit which you will further store. Why will you store? So that you can grow again. Do you understand? Because if they consumed everything, they would have no grains left. They would have no seeds left. Then what would they grow with in the next year? And the word tuhsinun is from the root letters ha, sad, nun, from the word ihsan. The word hisn is also from the same root, hisnul Muslim, fortress. So ihsan is to fortify, to protect, to provide a shelter, to provide refuge, to encompass. So he tells them that in these 7 years of famine, you will have fully consumed everything except a little bit that you will use to grow the following year. ثُمَّ يَأْتِي, then it will come, مِن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ, after that. After these 14 years the first 7 years of plenty and the next 7 years of shortage, then what's going to happen? مِن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ, after that, what's going to come? عَامٌ, a year, meaning the 15th year, فِيهِ, in it, يُغَاثُ النَّاسِ, the people will be given rain. يُغَاثُ is from the root letters غَيْن يَاسَ, from the word غَيْث. And what is غَيْث? Rain. What kind of rain is غَيْث? That a person prays desperately for it. And what else? It's much needed. It's much needed. So after the 7 years of shortage and famine, they will get a year in which they will be given a lot of rain, which is much needed. And the word yughasu can also be derived from the word ghaus, ghain waw sa, which is help. So the people will be helped. وَفِيهِ, and in it, meaning in that same year, يَعْصِرُونَ, they will press. يَعْصِرُونَ is from the root letters عين صاد را, and عصر, أعصر خمرا, to press, to squeeze out water, liquid from something. So the people will squeeze out, they will wring out, they will press out juice and oil and wine, etc. from their crop, from the fruits and the grains. Because previously what was happening? The grains that they had to store them. They were not able to extract any oil out of it. Similarly, the fruit, they were not able to extract any juice out of it. And whatever grain they had stored, from that even they could not extract. So then the 15th year, what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of rain, and as a result of that, there's going to be a lot of produce, and as a result of that, people will also squeeze out a lot of juice, a lot of oil, wine, etc., and even milk from the cows, from the animals. In other words, he told them that there will be plenty of rizq after the passage of these 14 years. Things will go back to normal. Things will go back to normal. So we see over here that Yusuf a.s., he tells them they're planning for the next 15 years. The 15th year is meant to tell the people that things will go back to normal. They will go back to normal. It's not that your entire civilization, your entire population is going to be finished now. Because just imagine a country that has gone through 7 years of famine. Just imagine. Nothing has grown. How can you stand up on your feet again? It's unimaginable. But by saying this, what is he telling them? That things will go back to normal for you.
We'll listen to the recitation of these ayat and we'll move on.